This is Tim Campbell from Visceral Decay, Wartoke, and Fairhaven, and you're experiencing Poppitt's Corner.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Poppitt's Corner. I'm thoroughly excited to be bringing on a local legend here, at least in my opinion. The great Dirk Rogers from Bad Acid Trip is joining me. Dirk, how you doing, man? Thanks for coming on and hanging. I really generally appreciate it.
Totally happy to do it, man. Great to see you.
Should be
Great
fun.
to be here. Yeah, I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Should be, man. Yeah. So the basis of the show, I'm going to go through your entire musical career, tell some stories, and just learn a little bit about you for a couple hours. So if you're ready, I'd love to get started.
Let's do it.
Okay. So right off the bat, I'm just generally curious. Give me the first recollection in your mind that you can recall hearing music for the first time, and kind of what was the band that did it for you?
The band that got me wanting to play.
No, just the first thing that you remember hearing.
Wow.
As a kid.
I would say, child of the 70s, Kiss was a big thing, had all the Kiss records. The first things I remember hanging up on my wall, the first gatefolds, were Steve Martin with his banjo and Prince.
Interesting. Now, how were you kind of hearing these particular records? Did your family bring them into the house, or did you have friends that were kind of...
My father had a large vinyl collection, but excuse me, he would go out a lot to the Goodwills and things, and I just started tagging along and getting my own records. Radio was a lot bigger back then too. Right.
Well, you had the top 40 and whatnot. You're probably learning a lot about music during, with that specific avenue.
And for me, a lot when I was younger, it was Dr. Demento.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I used to listen to his radio show when I was a kid all the time.
Now, what about it intrigued you enough to keep going back to it?
Comedy. It was fun, and I was a kid, so always looking for something fresh. Weird Al was a big thing, and there was a lot of songs about the topical things that I was into. Asteroids, video games, his take on, just every popular song through a comedic lens. Really dug it.
Interesting. Now, what time period are we talking about for you personally? Is this like 5, 6 years old, 7, 8?
Probably from 1976, so I'd have been 6 years old, to probably the early 80s.
Okay.
Yeah, 80, 81.
Now, during this particular time, did you start to notice your friends getting into this stuff, or were you kind of the anomaly?
I didn't have a lot of friends. I hung a lot by myself, played in my room, played clay figures, and just made art, played a lot in the backyard with like 2 or 3 friends that were on either side. We'd play Dungeons and Dragons and things like that, or Gamma World, or, something of that nature. But I really didn't hang out with a lot of friends that were ilk-minded until I was like 15, when I discovered, the Bad Kids and drugs and all that, and then metal.
Interesting.
And punk kind of started at the same time for me in 85.
Interesting. So around this time, did you start to, get into more, when was the point where you got into the heavy style bands and started to see live shows? What was actually your first live show that you remember going to?
Motorhead and Lizzie Borden at the Palladium. It was in the 80s, late 80s, mid to late 80s, 86, I want to say.
And what about that specific show made you want to go out to see it happen?
I was already into everything back then. We were all like heshers, so everything was thrash. You'd hang out the smoking section in high school when there was one, and everybody had back patches, and you would just share, like, oh my God, I've just discovered this new band Metallica, or I just discovered, this band Iron Maiden, they're so fucking evil. And then someone else would bring in Cryptic Slaughter, or at that time we had just discovered Napalm Death. It was prior to Scum coming out. We had a live tape of them, and there was nothing like that. We had never heard anything like that. So everything was measured against that tape.
Okay. Now, how do you even get your hands on that specific tape, in that specific time period? Because it's
used
not
to write
readily
to the bands.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we back then things are very accessible now, but back then, all of our heroes, Heresy, Cryptic Slaughter, Septic Death, Sore Throat, all those bands you would write to, and they would write back to you, and they would draw things on the letter. And that is one thing I actually took with my own band, is that I always try to personalize all of my mail. I always try to write back to people. If someone orders something, I want to put at least a letter saying thank you or a small drawing. It's all because of those bands when I was growing up.
Interesting. And what was the first band that you had discovered that you actually wrote to get the ball rolling?
We all wrote together, me and my friends, like our little group of 5 friends, all the other bad kids that were in the neighborhood. Someone wrote to Heresy, someone wrote to Old Lady Drivers, someone wrote to Napalm, and then we would all come together and read the letters. So, man, the first one I think is just a letter to, well, actually, I know it was a letter to Pushead, to Septic Death. And well, I wrote to him because I was just a huge fan of everything he did. He kind of epitomized everything that I aspired to be. He was an artist. He played thrash, and had a social political kind of bend to it, but had humor in it. And I had been able to see a couple of live shows at that point, like on videotape. And I liked what he was doing. It was very physical and artistic, I guess. But the first band that I really started corresponding with was actually Nuclear Death from Arizona. Actually, this band right here.
It's a great band.
It's a fucking great band. Lori Bravo's vocals were so incredibly inspirational to me. I actually wanted to breed with her because I thought we could make the ultimate grindcore baby. Because she had all this training and I would just, God, Bride of Insect or Carry On for Worm or even the EP For Our Dead. Oh, it just everything about it spoke to me. Yeah, yes, absolutely.
And after discovering more and more of these bands, when did you start to notice, even because you mentioned grindcore, when did that scene start to pop up in your mind around your area? And I mean, this is right around the time that I think Bad Acid Trip actually started. So
89 is when we first started.
Right. Yeah. So was there a grindcore scene happening all around you? You wanted to be a part of that, so you started Bad Acid Trip, or
there was a scene. It wasn't so much grindcore. All those bands were starting to come over here. They were playing a lot at the Chuck Landis Country Club in Reseda. That's where we saw like Napalm Death for the first time. But there were shows there like almost every night. It was like Napalm Death. Next night was MDC. The next night was DI or DRI or and the Morbid Angel would come over, and all those early earache bands had started to kind of filter in, and so the scene was kind of building up around that the grindcore scene. But it was really just thrash back then because there was bands like Cryptic Slaughter and Spastic Blur, another big one for us. The reason we started to play is because my childhood friend Joe Whitehouse had gotten a global guitar, and he did not know how to play, just like I don't know how to sing. And we were sitting in my room in North Hollywood, and he was trying to figure it out. He already had it tricked out with all the stickers. And he was like, man, and we were listening to, I think, Fear of God. Just
Don Crosby's Fear of God?
Sweden Fear, or European Fear of God. Is there any other one?
Yes.
Okay.
Don Crosby.
This one is just straight noise, blur, grind.
Okay.
Yeah. And we were listening to them. We were listening to Sore Throat, Disgrace of the Corpse of Sid album. And it was just unrestrained weirdness and grind, and just as the Sore Throat album is called, Unhindered by Talent. And Joe just turned to me. He's like, dude, we could fucking do this, man. We could totally do this. And I'm like, dude, I'd rather do makeup effects. That's all I want to make monsters and shit. And he goes, yeah, but you could do that on the side, man. Like we could try it. Just come on. At the time, I was actually working at a makeup supply place called Cinema Secrets in Toluca Lake in Burbank. And I had started dating I was 89, so I was 19. I had started dating this hairstylist there who was in her late 30s. And she had 2 sons that were closer, a little bit younger than me. And we ended up starting a band together with my then girlfriend's 2 sons, Jacob and Jason Roop. We practiced in Burbank for the first time in November of 89. We called ourselves Carnage. And then we found out, of course, there was another band, Carnage. And we were like, we don't want to be West Coast Carnage. So at as I said before, completely unhindered by talent. And we made a tape of our first recording, and it is fucking god awful, or it is incredibly awesome and unique. I don't know how you want to put it, but like Joe says, we were like in the middle of it. We were like, "Oh, play this," and he goes, "I'm playing the same 4 chords. Just every song. It's just the same 4 chords." We each wrote like 3 songs, and it was just like 1, 2, 3, 4, go, and like the EP, Anal Cunt's EP, that's like 4,000 tracks or whatever it is. It just sounded like that, but there was just 4 of us. So we went in and we played it for my then girlfriend, my then bassist, drummer's mother, Susanna, and we played, and she was like, this really reminds me of a Bad Acid Trip. And we just turned to each other and went, holy fuck, I've never heard of a band named that. I think that's us. So that was it. We started calling ourselves Bad Acid Trip. And we just kept playing. Everyone else kind of fell away, and that was like I said, in 1989. I think we played maybe once or twice again in 89. Just in the garage, not in front of anybody. Our first show? Might have been our second show. Our first show, I think, was probably a backyard show, but our second show would have been at the Hong Kong Low, which was a very big, iconic punk rock landmark in the.
So it's not Madame Wong's. It's
not Madame Wong's.
Okay.
No, it was the Hong Kong Cafe.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
Hong Kong Cafe.
That I've heard of.
Yeah.
Now, why the vocals at first? Did you pick up any other instruments to try it out first, or was the vocals kind of like? Did you just feel the most comfortable, I guess, just having a microphone? And
I tried to learn a bass at one point. I got a really crappy bass, and I could play like Smoke on the Water, and I could play poorly, not the whole song. And I'm left-handed, so or rather Joe, my guitarist at the time, he restrung it for me. I don't think it was ever in tune, but yeah, I could play very rudimentary, and I just didn't have the mindset to learn it. Vocals were my thing. Being unhindered by talent, again, going back to that phrase, I'm always have been very theatrical, and I guess back in my youth, we were hyperactive, and so I'd be given coffee to calm down and things so I could go to elementary school. And so I've always been kind of like, and so, yeah, I figured that it was a good fit.
Did you start to play around with, was there a grindcore scene while you guys were first starting out playing shows, or were you playing more of like thrash shows or punk rock shows? Where did you guys specifically fit in as far as your style of music at that specific time?
We didn't play too many shows. We couldn't figure out how to get into the scene. We played, our first show was just, like I said, a backyard with some other local band. It was just a rock band in North Hollywood. Then we played the Hong Kong Cafe. That was like a talent night almost. And so there was like a hair metal band right before us. Then we came on and we were just kind of Anal Cunt Noise. And then the band after us was like a new wave kind of band, like a late new wave band. We had a pit. It was fun. Everyone was screaming and running around. It was a good time. After that, we played a gig at Mikey, the original singer of Lack of Interest's house, with his little brother. Had a band called Peter Pansies, and we played with them at their house. God, I don't think we played too many more shows. I know we played at least 1 or 2, but you're talking 30 something years ago now. I don't exactly remember. But we didn't really start playing a lot of punk rock shows until probably 94 or 95. And that'd be when both Keith Zami, the guitarist, long-time contributor of Bad Acid Trip, founding member, you could say, and Mike Thrashhead, who was the drummer through that period. And Mike, Keith had a band called Sentinel that was all metal, and he had some connections in playing metal shows. And then Thrashhead, Mike Sullivan, Thrashhead, our old drummer, he worked at Green Hell Records, and he had also drummed for like Naked Aggression and a few other bands. And so he had a big in with the punk rock scene and the up and coming then power violence scene that was just kind of starting up. And we fit in right there at that moment. That was kind of like it was just kismet. There were all these other bands that were just forming at that point.
And around this time too, I believe you released a couple EPs at first. Obviously, you did some demo work
Mhm.
before that, but this was right around the time you started to do EPs. Was that the reasoning for doing them at that specific time? Because you wanted to at least have something out because you found kind of your guys' niche and
We did like 3 or 4 tapes in the beginning for the first few years, just tape demos. We had Kat Secchi did one tape for us in like 94, 95. And then Mike mostly it was Mike Thrashhead actually booked us a West Coast tour, our first Good Out and Go About 95. We needed to have something to sell, so we did a show at the now LA club, defunct LA club, the Natural Fudge Cafe. We recorded that off the board. We ended up releasing it as a one-sided 7-inch, and we sold that on the tour. That was the necessity of coming up with our first release. The second one, Remember, was after we had gotten back and we were like, okay, we have these songs and a couple more. Let's go in and do a recording. And Mike was like, well, I'm starting a label called Kill Music, and let's put it on that. And we were like, great. So we released that. Those were the first 2.
And what was the initial response to either or of them or both of them? Did you release them simultaneously? Did you say?
No, I'd say it's probably about a year, maybe in between the 2, around a year. Again, you're talking 30 something years ago or about that. Definitely the EP came out first because we were touring. Then we came back, and then it was a matter of saving up, everyone saving up as best as they could to release Remember.
And who were you touring with?
Well, we just did it on our own, but we did different shows up the West Coast for about a week. We played with Capitalist Casualties. We played Assuck. We did something called Chaos Days at Gilman, and it was the emo kid or the swing kids who ended up, I believe, becoming the Locust, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, I could be mistaken on that, good friends. But it was the Swing Kids, Bad Acid Trip, Assuck, Capitalist Casualties, and a band from Japan called Asfort.
Interesting.
Fucking amazing. Yeah.
Sounds like a eclectic bill because obviously Bad Acid Trip is a very eclectic style band. And I think your personality fits so well with it. So I want to focus just on your frontmanship, as it were, and just ask, I guess, how you found your niche with becoming a front man for this eclectic style band per se.
We've always been kind of eclectic because we were always leaning towards the I guess you'd call it the Monty Python side of life. We always gravitated towards bands like Sticky and Spastic Blur, Old Lady Drivers, Sore Throat, bands that always seemed to not take themselves too seriously and in fact went the opposite direction. At first it was more about just trying to be when you're young, you're really trying to find yourself and be shocking, try to find something that hasn't been done when everything has very much been done. You just kind of put your own spin on it. So at first it was just trying to be hardcore. And then I realized that a lot of the other bands we were playing with were very serious. And so I started pretending I was going to blow my guitarist because homosexuality seemed to really offend these open-minded people. And so I would start doing that, and much to the chagrin, of course, of my bandmates who would then go out and try to pick up chicks or whatever and be like, we're not gay. He's not gay. It's a shtick. But I then started to just kind of try to build on that. Anything that I could do that was just really weird. Again, trying to discover who you are at that age, shocking. The energy you have, just comes out of you in certain ways. And again, always leaning toward humor. So everything had some kind of a humorous bent to it. I find myself making fun of my peers, unfortunately. And that always kind of bites you in the ass because a lot of people are kind of sensitive. So I would be not mocking metal or the metaler bands, but doing things like, all right, everybody. I'm sorry, everybody. Let me talk to you like this so you can understand what I am saying. We are called. And, I don't mean anything malicious by it, but we kind of got a bit of a reputation for being a little, just little too odd, like,
But that's what the appeal to Bad Acid Trip was for me.
Thank you.
Like watching you guys play. I saw you at the Regal Inn, and I was like, oh no, not the Regal Inn. So I'm sorry, Malone's.
Oh yes.
And I was like, this is fucking amazing, because I never seen anything like it. So maybe I'm just like wet behind the ears when it comes to that particular style of grindcore.
Well, you're talking. I'm at the moment. I'm talking about in the 90s.
Correct. I mean, I'm talking way later.
Yeah, I think everything that is kind of pushing the envelopes, it becomes very mundane and very accepted in a matter of time. It's everything that I used to do back when it was like, oh my God, this guy doesn't stop, man. He's like taking his clothes off. He's dressing up like a midget. We used to be a lot more theatrical too. I would have a giant stage I built out of cardboard, and then I would dress up as a midget with these tiny legs, and I would do the show behind there, or we would dress up in drag, or if we were playing metal shows, or just anything to just be weird, I guess.
Well, but that probably caused a lot of attention for you guys, either good or bad. Did you start to notice more people getting into you because of this, or was it the opposite effect?
It was more the opposite effect. Darren Malakian once said, when he was doing Lynch the Weirdo for us, producing it, he told me, he's like, look, guys, when you guys play shows with us, you're going to be playing in front of thousands of people. And in those thousands of people, maybe a third of them will tolerate you. Most of them probably won't like you. But he goes, in those thousands of people, there will be like 20 people that really, really get you. And those are the people that you're appealing to. Those are the people that'll be there for you 20 years from now. They'll still have your CDs or your records. And he goes, those are the people that you want to play for. Those are the people that feel it, that are connected to you. And that's your fan base. And so I always, whenever we play, I've always kept in the back of my head that most people aren't going to get it, but there are one or two in there that are going to say, no, I really understand what they were doing, probably better than I do.
Well, let's move to a different kind of topic within
Sure.
the Bad Acid Trip camp, is your musical palette. How do you write? How does a Bad Acid Trip song even get written? Like, what are some of the things that you guys are looking for when writing a song for the band? Because again, it's so eclectic and out there. It's like I wouldn't even know where to start with writing a song for you guys.
It's kind of changed over the years with the different members. I think the signature sound that we have now is because of the diversity of like Carlos, our drummer, is very much a death metal guy. I mean, we all like everything, all of our phones have a very eclectic mix of music on it, but Carlos definitely is the death metal kind of guy. Caleb at this point, who is both our bassist and guitarist right now, actually for the last 10 years. He comes at it in a much more, I don't want to say math metal, but like a Dillinger, I guess you'd say. And again, I'm kind of all over the place. The content of the lyrics usually is when I sit down and it's been whatever's been going on in my head and I just start to write. I do have like 4 or 5 notebooks where things are started and just never come to fruition. But I will come back later, the writing process for the next album, and I'll go through those and see if anything sparks anything. Caleb and Carlos usually, we just actually, funny, I was at practice earlier today and we were just getting ready to start our next writing process. They are each at this point doing like a Zoom where, because Carlos is out in Castaic Lake and Caleb's in Burbank, kind of near me. So we still get together once a week for a couple of hours, and then we'll jam out the set and then a couple of other songs. And then everyone will say, hey, I've got this part. No. I'm thinking about this, and this part, for drums. And then Carlos will say, okay, what about this and this? I have this riff, but I don't know where to put it. So I think just the eclecticness of the music now comes from all of our diverse background.
And when you're even recording the vocals for a Bad Acid Trip song, are your cadences in your voice? I want to kind of touch upon that if I may too.
Sure.
Where how do you find the balance to when you do a high part or you do a low part or guttural, or where does that whole, because again, your voice has a kind of a wider range than most vocalists.
Thank you. It really it starts out with me trying to cram as much fucking lyrics into a song than there is possibly air for, to which my bandmates will say, okay, you got to back off. Like Darren, again, going back to Darren, used to say, you guys fucking put like 5 songs in one song. You guys got to learn how to breathe. I still have trouble learning how to breathe, but a lot of it is once I've kind of finessed the vocals down to something that I can get through in breathing through a song, then it's us playing it live, usually for about a year at least. In that time, I start to discover the characters that are in there. I also, not only because of as much as it's about breathing when I'm in the studio, as you know, I'm a bit physical on stage. And so that's a whole different animal, being on the stage and running around and then going, okay, I thought I could do this, but I'm over 50. Oh my God. So it's really about being on stage, learning how to play it while, being engaged with the audience, and then figuring out what characters are applicable. And then when you get into the studio, like we had just did with our new record coming out, it's about talking to the producer and talking to other people and saying, hey, what about this? I was thinking about doing this part as a little kid, and then there's a new song that we have coming. I could play a couple new tracks for you off the album, but to get back to the point, there's a song on their new album where I'm basically playing a 5-year-old in a closet whose family's just been murdered by the cult that they were a part of. And I brought that song in thinking I was going to do the whole track as a child. Like everything was going to be done like this. And once I got into the studio, I talked to Toshi, the guy recording us and producing it. And he was like, well, I think what you want to try to do actually is just, accent it, do a normal character here, one of your highs or your mids. And then at the end, accent it with the little kid voice. And we tried that. And so a lot of it was just discovery at the moment.
Now, have you guys never made a full length record where you haven't played it live first, then recorded it?
Correct.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. We usually start playing our new material within, as soon as we have it tight. As soon as we have it tight to where we're all comfortable, not looking at each other or whatever, and it flows, then we'll try it out. A lot of songs that we'll try out, we're like, okay, that's not a live song. Let's not do that again. We lost the audience on that. We got too weird. So yeah, a lot of it is trying it in front of a live audience, seeing how they react, seeing how we react, seeing what the vibe is, how it changes. And then we go into the studio and we say, okay, we're going to do a full length, 30 minutes. That's about 20 songs. Okay. What songs do we want to do? We usually will have about 30 songs ready to go. We'll sit down with a pen and paper, each of us individually. We'll say, I like all these songs. And then we'll look at the 3 lists and we'll say, okay, this song's on all 3, that song's on all 3. And that is kind of how we base what's going to go on the record.
Do you end up using the other songs later on?
We do. Yeah.
Okay.
We usually do splits with them. Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's a very cool concept, because in the grindcore world, that's primarily what grindcore bands kind of do. They do a lot of splits with other bands, get them, and it helps. I don't know. That's more of a punk rock genre in the metal genre. Hopefully I'm making
that's kind of what grindcore is.
Correct,
Grindcore
right.
is punk rock and metal.
Correct. So it makes a lot of sense why you would do that and have splits on top of full length albums and whatnot.
Absolutely.
Now let me get back to your specific journey and whatnot, where I guess around the mid 90s, when did you actually get signed to Serge Tanker's
Serge Tankian?
Yeah, Serge Tankian's label.
That was 2003.
Oh, okay. So it's way later. So so even before that, you guys released your first full length record for The Weird, by The Weird, in like 99?
98, I want to say. It was around the time we did the split with Municipal Waste.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So around that specific time, what was your specific reasonings for wanting to get a proper full-length record out in that specific time period?
We just hadn't done it. It was the next thing. We had started doing tapes. Then we could afford to do a couple of 7-inches. Then we started doing splits through the mid to late 90s with bands like Kung Fu Rick, Laceration, Municipal Waste was, I think, the last one we did. A band called Be Numb. They were a big relapse band. And it just seemed to be the next evolution for the band is to release a full length. Instead of, we would usually go in for our recording sessions and we would record, like I said, 20 to 30 songs, even back then when they were a little quicker. And there was a lot of the, napalm, you suffer boy. We would go in and then we would have, okay, we've recorded these 20 or 30 songs. How do we want to break these up? And the first time that we did that, we were like, okay, let's put these among 3 or 4 different splits with different bands and get our name out there in the world. And then we had RSR, Regurgitated Semen Records from Europe, contacted us and said, would you guys be into doing this full length? We would, put up for it for CDs. And we were like, fuck yeah, oh my God, fuck yeah. So we did a full length and released it through RSR out of Germany. It had all these samples on it. It had some really, really crappy tracks, live tracks at the end that we did in this transvestite bar in Frisco. And I mean, they make Crass sound like gold, man, because Crass live recordings, because they're really bad. But because the guy was like, look, I want some more bonus tracks or something to put on the end. And we were like, we literally have nothing. And he goes, could you just record something? And we were like, okay. So we recorded like Ghetto Blaster, fucking recording, and it was amazingly bad. So we released that through him. When Surge signed us, he took that same release and bought it out. I believe he bought it out from RSR. I'm not really sure how all that worked, but he took off all the samples because he was worried that we were going to get sued, because at that point people had started to do that. And we had like Godzilla samples, and we had like Nightbreed, and as most punk metal thrash grindcore bands have. We weren't quite so bad where it was like a sample every single song, but we did have a lot of samples and we really loved them. Anyway, he took all the samples off. He took the extra bad tracks off, and that became the first our Surge release. He released it through.
So it's a re-release.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, around this time period, this is when kind of Toxicity kind of came out, Hypnotize, Mesmerize, right? Those records.
System came up.
Right. So obviously, like, System of a Down became massive. I mean, they were literally played on the radio. It was just K-Rock like every other song.
Absolutely.
Right. You couldn't get away with not hearing, probably every hour, I would say you couldn't get away with not hearing a System of a Down song.
Yeah.
Now, so he signed you kind of in the midst of all that stuff.
Correct.
That's kind of cool.
It was really, really
How did
cool.
he approach you guys?
He had come up with Keith and Jose, our drummer, in high school. Actually, he had Serge and Chavo and Darren. That's not quite right. I think Darren went to Hollywood High. Man, I'm pulling at brain strings here, but either way, Keith and Chavo and all of them, they had come up together in high school. Keith's band Sentinel had played with System. We had played with System a few times too, through the friendship with Keith. We would do a couple of shows in Hollywood. We'd play at their practice space, vice versa, that kind of thing. And when they started getting popular, Serge was very much into supporting the underground scene, supporting all of his friends and all that. And he said, if we go, we are going to try to do something for you guys. And we were like, yeah, whatever. And he was like, no, you guys have always been a big influence for us. And he I'll just say that he really appreciated my vocals. He liked my weirdness and my characters and things like that. And he was like, no, if there's anything we can do, we want to do it. And we were like, great, whatever, haha, fuck you, whatever. Let's go get a beer. And one day, Keith lived across the street from me. Like good friends. So he came over one night to hang out and was just like, dude, you're not going to believe this. I was talking to Serge or Chavo or Darren. It was one of them. And they were like, we want to take you guys on tour, but we need a record. So Serge is going to put out a record for you, or he's going to produce a record, or let me rephrase. Darren is going to be the producer on it. Darren wants to be a producer, and he was a big fan, of our brand, I guess you'd say, our weirdness. And so that's kind of how it all started from there.
Interesting. So was that the reissue that you're talking about?
No, that was Lynch the Weirdo.
Oh, okay. So they put out a record, they reissued the record, and
they reissued the record, I think, basically just to own our catalog. Everything that was 7 inches was just like, whatever, it's fine. We had some of the songs that were on the 7 inches we had redone on the record, or on For the Weird.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it was just a matter of legality, and that they wanted to own the versions of those songs as well. Serge's label. I'm not really sure what the whole thing was, but his reasoning at the time was, while you guys are working on something, I want to have something to play with. I want to be able to promote you guys. If I don't have anything to promote you guys until the new record, then it's going to drop and there's all this dead time. So let's take this old record of yours, your last record. I'll release it, it'll be available. People will start to get a taste of what you guys are about. And so that's how that's
amazing. That, that's kind of huge for a big band to give back to, like, it was like
Metallica and the Misfits, basically, except Misfits are a little more talented than we are.
Well, but same concept though.
Same concept. Yeah. It was someone being really fucking down and remembering the street that they came from and all their friends, and like, I got nothing but love for all those guys. Yeah,
that's amazing.
Absolutely.
So can I ask you what the deal was for when you initially signed with them?
In regards to the money, or
no, there's just a contract. Did you sign like a 5-album deal with Serge's label?
We signed at least I believe it was just like a per record. They wanted to see how each thing did. It wasn't like a whole 5 albums, because Serge's label ended up just kind of going under. It was us, Kittens for Christian. Oh my God, what was the other band?
So he didn't do a lot, is what you're kind of saying.
Didn't do too much. No, neither. Well, Serge and Darren, is as altruistic as they are. System is their main bag, and well, at that point, they were kind of they were a little rocky, starting to head toward the rocks a little bit. But Serge definitely is hugely creative, and he's out doing his own records. Darren has Scars on Broadway, was doing his own thing, and so I think the labels, in order for them to be successful, there would have needed to be a little bit more attention,
right?
Solely to that.
So, with this in mind, I guess, where am I going to go with this? So, with does the label still own those records, so that they're just gone forever? Because even if the label folded or folds at this point, I'm not too sure if it's still around, but so even if it folded, would they still own the masters and whatnot, or would that revert back to you guys?
I believe they still own the masters for well, actually, do they? No, I think Keith has the masters for Lynch the Weirdo.
Okay, so this is only for like a certain time period. It's not like in perpetuity.
No. It was just for a certain time.
Interesting. So did you end up doing the tour with System?
We did.
Okay.
We toured. Well, when we first signed, they were like, okay, who do you guys want to tour with? You guys are really hard to put with another band. And they were like, you're too grindcore, I guess, for like some of the metal bands that they wanted to put us with. And we just didn't really fit in. They weren't really sure how to market us. So they tried a couple of different, some of them worked out, some of them didn't. We played a couple of shows because our manager at the time, Rick Sales, was also Slayer's manager. And so we played a couple of shows of Slayer. One of them went really good. One of them went really bad. And then they kind of were just, they didn't know where to put us. And so the first tour that came up for us was Guar. And we toured with Guar for 2 months. Best fucking time of my life. It was amazing. Dave Brocky, Corey all of them were still alive. And I think it was War Party, I think was the name of the album. It was fucking insane. It was great. The nicest, hardest working fucking band. I learned so much from them. And then actually, Dave Brocky, actually, one time we were in New York and he's like, Dirk, I need to talk to you. Come on. So we go upstairs and he's like, sit down. He's like, all right, because I got to tell you some things. And I was like, okay, what do you got? And he goes, I like your band. I like your energy and I like your theatrics, but you got to learn to slow the fuck down. You talk like you're on speed. And he's like, you got to realize when you're talking to your audience, they're drunk and they're retarded. And I was like, oh, really? And he goes, they're not really, but you got to pretend they are. And you've got to talk slower. So
makes a lot of sense. You got to talk to him.
And I did actually take that to heart. And it was the same thing that Darren had told me once. He's like, why you agonize over these lyrics? You have pages and pages of all these punk rock lyrics. And he goes, but then you scream your fucking guts out and no one can understand anything you say. Why don't you try to slow down so people can understand what you're saying and be different from all the other bands that are just screaming their ideas out that are just bouncing off of people because it's just a sonic wall. And I took all that to heart. And that actually might go back to the question of my characters and things like that, because instead of just being the one character of or it's, hey, everybody, let's talk like Kermit the Frog or something like that, just so that it's a little clearer in my enunciation. So
interesting. And I got to ask, the next step after recording the Lynch the Weirdo record, what is the initial reaction? Do you guys start to get more of a buzz at this point, or is it because of System of a Down's success that you guys kind of unfortunately got the rug got kind of pulled up from under you at this point?
We are accused of ripping off System of a Down. We did start about 5 years before them, but it is two different genres of music. It's just that there's similarities in our vocals, our weirdness and all that. But our buzz didn't, we were on tour for about 2 years at that point, supporting that record. We did tours with Guar, then it was Motor Grader, Dog Fashion Disco, Tub Ring, Dillinger Escape Plan, God, who else? Then we did System of a Down with Mars Volta, and that was like a big stadium tour in front of thousands of people. I got to say the immortal words of "Hello, LA Sports Arena," and I was in the fucking LA Sports Arena. And since we were the opening band, I was the first of many acts to say, "Hello, LA Sports Arena, are you ready to rock?" It was fucking amazing. And then the last tour we did was actually, we then went across to Europe and we played a 2-week tour in in Amsterdam and Germany. It was supposed to be a lot bigger, but we got over there. The promoter that we thought had booked our show, unfortunately, had booked poorly, and we had a really rough time. And I kept a great journal that I'll release sometime, but I had to wait a few years before some of the things in it were rather scathing.
Oh, I see.
Yes. But then after that, our last tour was 2006. Our last big tour supporting that record was Ozfest. And that was, again, a phenomenal experience because that was the year that Ozzy decided to play on the second stage. So we got to open for fucking Ozzy Osbourne, grindcore band.
So, and obviously being on Surge's label around that time probably got you these opportunities. Let's just be honest.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I'm not saying Bad Strip is a slouch band by any stretch of the imagination. You guys are phenomenal, but I'm saying because of the notoriety of System.
Absolutely. It was certainly the notoriety of System in that it allowed Serge, Darren, and George, who ran Surgical Strike. It gave us a bit more clout. Being attached to such a large act that everyone was into. That was not just an up and coming metal act, but an eclectic metal act. And of course, at the same time, you've got all the bands from, Mike Patton and all were making all of the weird music very, very legit. And I think there was just an appetite for it at that point. So
see, I think because of all the bands that you're naming, to me, they're more kind of artsy, they're out there. Those bands are like the Mars Volta you named, Dillinger, System of a Down. Now, System of a Down, to me, because it became so massive, I think they made it okay for bands to be accepted in that specific style of music. To me, because
I would agree. Yeah. I mean, but that's just with this recent,
normies is what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I would agree. But eclectic music goes back. I mean, you go to like Frank Zappa, and things like that. But yeah, mainstream radio play, things like that. System certainly brought that into the,
and what was
mainstream.
Funny is, from my understanding of this, is I believe K-Rock said, I will never play System of a Down. And then obviously Toxicity became so massive that they literally had to play the record.
They played Bad Acid Trip too.
Yeah. Well, but I'm saying, like, so you had radio stations having to cave because of how big they got around that time. And that's just the way it is.
That's the power of the people.
Yeah.
That's, your dollar speaks, you want change, then speak with your money, at this point, it seems to count more than your vote.
Well, you vote with your wallet is what I always say. But
yes, thank you. Well put. Yeah, I think I was searching for that phrase.
So you were doing all these big tours around this time. When did you start to get up into, because you mentioned way earlier during this interview what you wanted to pursue a makeup artist kind of career. So when did that specific avenue play into effect for you? Was it around this specific time period or after all the big tours?
In regards to the band or just in regards as a career?
No, just in regards to
I started doing makeup effects in 89. Actually, let me rephrase that. I started in 80. I graduated in 87. I would say I got my first makeup gig in 88. And so I had been doing makeup pretty much consistently. In the beginning, not really enough to pay my bills, but from I want to say 94 up until probably 2000, it was a lot of music videos. That was a big time for music videos. So I did a lot of work, and I also worked for people like Screaming Mad George and all in the late 90s. And so the entire time I was doing makeup effects. That when we were a lot more theatrical, we kind of got out of our theatrics right as we were getting signed. We were still I was still like, I would dress up as a version of Jack Skellington. I would do, like I said, the midget costume where I was inside of a box and it looked like I had tiny legs. And we just started and I also would start doing, blood theatrics, fake cutting off the cock or something like that and throwing it into the audience and whatnot.
So gore's perfect for you.
Well, at that point we had already stopped doing it. And if you're touring with gore, you don't really need to do makeup effects. You can't even step in the ring. So don't. You'll just be eaten by gore. So there is only one gore, and they are the greatest theatrical band since the grindcore.
Yeah. It's kind of like, for me, the Mentors are kind of like that. Like there's only one of them.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, so you were doing effects and touring it simultaneously. So obviously your job was probably, cool enough for you to leave for 2 months and come back and
they
have your job again.
Yeah. I will be, when I was working at Screaming Mad George's, it was like from like 98 to like 2003. We had just done a movie called Faust, and I was kind of like starting to want to move on. Makeup effects in general, unless you're lucky, really lucky enough to be in a effects house that works consistently. I'm in one of those now at KMB. But you always get laid off at the end of a movie. So you're going to be working crazy for like 3 or 4 months, and then you're down for as long as you are until you either get called or you start applying for other gigs. At that point, I was in one of those lulls, right? And it all just was kismet. So I had just come off of a movie. I was kind of a free agent, and it was time to get signed and go on tour. So being signed at that point for the first couple of tours, they gave us money to be able to pay our rent. Other than that, we just lived in the van. And lived as cheap as we could. So
it's kind of like an actor. Actors go through that period where they're on call for, they do this lucrative movie for this specific months, and then they're let go and have to find another project.
Absolutely.
Like
That's
some
true with most
Voice actors are like that.
This
Pretty
is
much
true with most of the motion picture effects.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
interesting. Now, what about makeup effects kind of did it for you? What was the appeal in the beginning to want to do? Did you
it's
see
the
a
only thing I've
movie?
ever wanted to do. In 1973, at the age of 3, I did a report on, as best as I could draw it and write it at age 3, of Godzilla versus King Ghidorah. And my first exposure to where I knew what I wanted to do, but didn't know what it was. There was a book called, it was Movie Monsters. I think it's Movie Monsters, but it was a book that I had stolen from the library at Halloween in Simi Valley, where I was growing up in the 70s. And in it, there were these like chapters. One was the best human monster, and it was this guy putting on his makeup. It turned out to be Bela Lugosi doing his own makeup. And then I turned the page, and it would be the best ghost or whatever. It would be like the Phantom of the Opera, and then there would be a photo of Lon Chaney putting the makeup on. And I was so enamored by this. I was just like, you mean like, it was like, those are people. And I started figuring it out. My father had always turned me on to, kaiju films and all the classic Universal films. And I just really, really loved it.
So like Jack Pierce era.
Jack Pierce.
He's kind of the king when it comes to...
Jack Pierce is definitely the king of, but I mean, it was more than that. It was like William Tuttle, Bill Nye, John Chambers, of course. I was never a huge fan of Planet of the Apes, but I loved it in that I would always go to the matinee and see all the movies and anything with makeup in it. For me, it was like more Harryhausen, Ray Bradbury, things like that.
So are you
Fangoria?
So are you more into the gory stuff, like the Tom Savini stuff? Or are you more into like
Savini was the first guy that made me realize that I could do it for a living. His books, Grand Illusions. I grew up without, my family didn't have a lot of scratch. So in the late 80s, after I graduated, they would say, "What do you want to do?" And I would say, I want to make monsters. And they'd say, "Well, we have no idea how to get you a job doing that," my parents. And I would say, well, there's a school, Joe Blasco School in Hollywood, but it was like $1,500 to take the course. And that was astronomical to my family. So I would just get jobs at makeup supply houses and start meeting other ilk-minded people. And then just started getting my own jobs that way, and then trying to work into labs.
Now, would they teach you like how to put on the makeup so it would kind of shine in a different way for the camera? Like, because lighting, makeup, so it all plays a part, and you got to create shadows and things.
Well, yeah. I mean, when I first started out, I wanted to do everything. I would try to sculpt and paint and certainly apply makeup. That was my first passion, was doing actual monster makeup. The gags and stuff that I do now, that's just it. Most effects artists will tell you, or at least most lab techs, I think, will tell you that one of the greatest thrills is problem solving. It's okay. We're going to cut off this guy's leg for Walking Dead. How the fuck are we going to do that? Well, we could do it this way, this way, and this way. Well, the camera's going to be here, so you can't see this. And it's like, okay, well, how are we going to get this done? Let's figure it out. That's the fun of it now. So
that's awesome. So and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not too familiar on the behind the scenes work when it comes to movie making. Sure. So excuse my ignorance on this, but
it's all good.
How much of the lighting plays into the part of how you apply the makeup on these said actors and actresses?
Well, the lighting, I mean, everything. The lighting is essential. The color of the lighting, the placement. Lighting is essential to your work. It's always good to talk to the cameraman, the lighting, or the camera person.
So if it's daytime and nighttime, that's probably two different methods of how you're going to apply the makeup on to that said individual, correct?
It factors in.
Okay.
If you're shooting outdoors under 52, I think it's 52K, and indoors 36. Oh, you're catching me off guard.
Well, I don't even know what that is. So like,
the measure of the light.
okay.
How bright it is.
Okay.
But yeah, it certainly matters. Low budge, lots of low lighting, makes things look a little bit more realistic. So, and then bright white light, you better be on your ball because everything's going to show up, especially with today's cameras.
Now, have you particularly done like a black and white film when applying makeup?
Have I ever done a black and white film?
And where I'm going with this is, I'm just kind of curious if you had
I don't think so.
Oh, okay. Because like obviously back in, I'm going to say the Universal Monster era, they applied makeup to what they had as far as being in black and white. So they they used. I mean, Frankenstein to me is still as scary as probably when it first came out in 1931, 32 era.
Yes.
With, I mean, when you see Boris Karloff, he's looking down, the lights are shining on, so the makeup, it creates that kind of, with the lighting, creates the whole mystique to it. So it's very creepy. So I was just curious, how, I guess when color came in, how that changed that whole perspective.
Well, Frankenstein is like German expressionism, and the lighting is in the shadow is a character unto itself in that type of film. The color, the lighting is still just as, the shadow is still just as important. It's just that instead of it being, I'm not much of a lighting guy, so I can't really say, but I think it's just important. It's just that when you're doing in black and white, things are so much more stark, and the contrast is it's just so hard that you get a more, and it's also the type of film, if you're talking about Frankenstein, it has that kind of ghostliness to it. I think there's a lot of factors that doesn't say that one's better than the other. It's just two different kinds of mediums.
I've just always been fascinated by kind of how you create the mystique in movies, and it's all art to me. So it's just like music. It's like when you're finding your tone, I guess, for your guitars or bass or drums or whatever. It's kind of like the lighting, the makeup, the types of shots that the cameraman would use, the director. It to me, it's all I don't know, they correlate very well. Agreed. With making a record and making a movie. It's there's just different factions to how you go about, like you said, problem solving, right?
Well, it's also a communal process usually. Making a movie or making a video or whatever is, you have your makeup artist, you have your cameraman, your director, all those people all come together, hair, lighting. And it's the same with music. You have your bandmates, you have the producer, you have
engineer, you got the mastering guy,
the artist doing the art on it. So it's very communal in that.
And your vocal cadence sees how you're going to want this particular part to be portrayed. The tone.
If you're hopefully you're open to all the input from everyone else. So that is certainly applicable.
Sure. And so it's just to me, it's all art, and I just love art.
Agreed.
I'm just an art fiend.
Oh, yeah, me too. Total art junkie.
Now let's move ahead. After, because there was kind of like a 7-year gap in between at least the full length record. So I'm just kind of curious what you were doing and focusing on primarily in between 2004 to 2011.
2004, we were still touring. We toured until 2006. By that point, we had 2006, 7, 8. We went a little bit more, and then Jose, the drummer that we had toured with, left. Just creative differences. His time had come to an end. He actually is now doing, oh God, what's the name of it? It's a Warhammer band. I don't know what it's called. Sorry, Jose.
Well, I'm glad you still keep in contact.
I actually don't. I don't really keep in contact with anybody. I'm terrible like that. I don't really talk to anybody anymore. I just sit in my house with my cats and my lady. I am the epitome of the antisocial.
You're a recluse.
A little bit. Yeah. I guess so.
So nothing wrong with that.
Well, you get older and people get families, people move away, people change.
Your priorities start to change with that.
Exactly. So, yeah.
All life. Good. So after, I guess, 2007, so 2008,
Jose, he was the first to leave. And then Carlos, our drummer from 98, who actually was the drummer on For the Weird, he returned and was gung-ho to go. We started to practice. I think then we came out with our next record. Wait, did Carlos come back by then? Boy,
I know I'm stumping you a little bit.
you are stumping me a little bit. It all bleeds together. Let me think here. Did Carlos come back for that, or I think our next record would have been
2011. It would have been
Humanly Possible.
Yes,
Humanly Possible. Okay, so Carlos hadn't come back yet. We ended up getting Danny Walker. And he was the drummer on that record. And then right around that time, Keith left. Keith had been. Okay, hold on.
We might have to restart this interview out now.
No, I'm getting it. Damn it! It's just a lifetime of abuse has caught up to me in my 50s. Okay, so right around that time, actually, there was a lot going on. The record itself took a little bit of time to record. Keith was having a lot of issues at that point. Was just having some issues personally. Wasn't very happy about everything, America. And so he had always wanted to move to New Zealand. That ended up happening for him. He was able to leave. But Keith, we recorded with Danny and we had the tracks recorded. And then through the process of, in the time that we were recording everything else, Keith kind of started to falter a little bit, and it was a real rough time.
He was distant from you guys. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah, okay. He was distant. He was going through a lot on his own. He had a lot of mental issues at that point that he was trying to work out, and just a lot of self-discovery that was causing him some strife. Unfortunately, it bled into everything around him. He became kind of difficult to be around. Carlos had rejoined the band at that point, and we had started to work on stuff, and it had gotten to the point where Keith hadn't shown up for practice in I don't know, it was a few months.
Okay. So the band had to move on from there.
Well, and I basically it came down to my two band. We came down to Carlos and Caleb saying, we're going to quit because we can't do this anymore. Luckily around that time, well, luckily not really, Keith came to us and said, I need a break. I don't know if he just felt it in the air or it was just time. But he just came to us and said, look, I got to cut and run. So we ended up releasing a music video without him. That was just us three. And Keith took that really personal. He said, I should have been involved in that. And I was the one who made the call because I was the tightest with Keith. We had, basically come up together across the street. We're those kind of friends, like we did all sorts of crime and shit together, supporting the police by committing crime.
I think the statute of limitations is well passed.
Yes, I would never admit it anyway. I was just kidding everybody. So it was a real tough time, but Keith came and said, look, I need out. And we did this video. He took that really personally. That put even more of a distance between us. And at that point we had been practicing without a guitar. We would just be the three-piece, and Caleb would just be playing bass. And when it get to be Keith's part in the song, either we wouldn't play those songs or Caleb would try to figure it out and play it. Because I had played with Keith for so long and he and I had basically built what became Bad Acid Trip together. Everybody has helped. Every member has built what we are. Everybody's influence has built what we are today. But Keith was
instrumental in that.
Without Keith, there would be no Bad Acid Trip. There were plenty of times when I was just done, and he was like, nope, we're sticking to it. So him leaving was real hard for me. And we were immediately like, okay, well, we should get another guitarist, and again, this is like in 2011, 12. And I was like, look, I'm not really ready to replace Keith. Do you think you could play bass, Caleb, like we've been doing? And he goes, well, I could try to figure out how to split my sound and just do highs on one side and lows on the other. And I mean, we can't do all the crazy Bad Acid Trip noodling, but we can be more Agathocles or Gothocles, more grindcore, just straight raw.
well, yeah, you can find a new sound within this new
and
lineup.
then whenever it got to the point that I'd be comfortable having another guitarist, now it's been 10 years. And it's not that I'm not okay with getting a guitarist, it's just you know how you get accustomed to something and all of a sudden it's been a fucking decade and you're like, holy shit.
Well, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So it's one of those things.
It's not that it's broke and needs fixing, it's just that we want to always expand. We don't want to we don't want to do the same thing over. We don't really do covers and we don't really do old material.
Oh, interesting.
I mean, back in like 95, we did a cover of Devo's Mongoloid. What is the other cover? We did a cover of Old Lady Driver's Wax the Boner.
Okay, so you're talking like eclectic cover songs as well, because I mean, how would you do a normal?
You wouldn't,
like, it wouldn't make any sense for you guys. So I guess is my point.
Yeah,
so,
but we don't do cover songs, and like I said, we don't really do old material. We just always have something new to play. It's yeah.
And do you think because obviously Badass Trip has never really had a quote unquote hit song, or at least a song that most people could lock on to, because most bands have that one or two songs where everybody knows.
Not us.
Do you think that's played in your favor to where it's like, well, since we're so eclectic, we can just do whatever the fuck we want to do?
I don't think it's really played in our favor.
Well, as far as not having to play the old material goes, I'm not talking in terms of like popularity or I'm only talking like internal musically wise, where you're not obligated to play old material because of it.
We every once in a while you get someone who yells something out and they'll just happen to yell it out at the right moment. But having like an over 30-year career, there's so much material that a lot of sometimes they'll yell stuff out that we just can't play because again, we only have a bass. I don't even know how you'd put one guitarist, one bass. We have one set of strings, and in some of our old songs you would be doing two different things. But it's it if they hit us at the right moment and we're able to do it, and it's one of those songs from like the 7 inches or something, we'll play it. But again, it's got to just hit us at the right moment, like at the end when we're done. But usually people yell out shit that we just can't play, like Zombie Nation, and we're like, we can't do that. Like, but or you know,
well, you're probably grateful that people actually know the song itself. So
it's humbling. Yeah. Anytime anybody takes an interest in your art, it's a humbling experience, you know, that someone looks at it and goes, I had a guy when I was in Arizona one time, not recently, but like years and years ago, I had this guy come up to me after we played and he goes, I just want you to know that I'm in the military and I just got back from fucking Iraq and I shot this dude in the head and I took his fucking head straight off. Like it blew out everywhere. It was fucking incredible. He goes, it's the first time I ever did that. And he goes, I came back and I listened to your guys' record to unwind. And I just want to say thanks. And I was like, floored, like quiet. We're driving to the next place and I'm sitting in the back of the van just like all quiet, staring at the wall, just like going, fuck. Like what an incredibly humbling experience to be a part of something like that. I'm not saying the whole killing, but what the guy had to do, and then how he had, and the fact that he looked to our art as a way to get through what he was trying to process is just an incredible moment. It gave me the chills, you know. And anytime something, I mean, that's kind of an extreme example, but anytime something like that happens, even to a lesser degree, to me and to my bandmates, it's a very humbling experience that someone even gives a fuck. And if you just have that one song that everyone knows, you know, We Bob Sheep or whatever it is, you know, I don't know why I just brought Cyndi Lauper. Anyway, but if you just have that one song, then a lot of people just know that one song. They're always wanting that one song. And it's just funner when people don't know what they're going to get, you know, they don't know what they're going to get on stage. They don't know what they're going to get vocally or musically, rather.
But I think that opens up, you're not like these bands that have like one or two hits. I always think they imprison themselves. It's kind of like being famous. Like they imprison themselves. It's like they don't have the freedom to even express themselves because they're obligated to play that one song for money. And so to me, I would much rather be in your shoes than like be quote unquote super famous.
I think that also depends on where you make your living. How if your living is being a musician, then you are happy to play 6 Feet Under music when you might be able to play Brain Drill fucking insanity. but you're getting a paycheck, and that's a-okay, man. You're doing what you love. You're doing it within the art. It may not be exactly what you want, but hey, that's a communal art, unless you're a solo one guy doing everything on his own, captured by robots, which is fucking rad too. It's, you got to give to make your art, so, but I see what you're saying about it being I don't know. I
There's
think it's
freedom
a double.
in that, I guess, is my point.
There is freedom in it, but there's also freedom in just being a musician and playing music in front of. It may not be the exact thing you want to play, but playing it in front of those people and having that connection, that stage connection, and all that. It's fucking great, man. I love it.
I love when this happens, because it's happened as being a fellow musician. I'm not trying to shoehorn me into this story by any means.
Shoehorn in what you got.
I had a young lady say, she was going through, I guess, something. She was in the hospital, and she named one of our records as like that got me through that whole thing. Like, I thought I wasn't gonna make it, and I've listened to your record, and it helped me out so much to get through that shitty experience. And I was like you, I was like, I don't know what to say. Do you know what I mean? Because like,
fucking humbling,
to me, the music that I create for me, and then I like to throw it out in the world, just see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
Just like what we're doing here on the podcast.
Sure.
Right? Doesn't matter how many people are watching or listening. It's the fact of the matter of just doing it and expressing yourself in a crazy time that we're living in. It's, to me, that I need that expression. I need to have that. And so with you, I kind of feel the same vibe. You need to have an outlet to express yourself.
Absolutely.
And so Badass Trip, to me, that's why I love the band so much, because you can clearly see it's like, it's not just you, but it's the three of you expressing yourself in a way that has never been, I've never seen it before.
Thank you.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I
So maybe I'm just wet behind the ears on as far as the specific genre of music you guys play and whatnot. I'm sure there are other bands that do that, but I've just never seen it.
I'm sure everything's already been done,
Right.
But as long as you're honest in your delivery and you're honest in your execution, who cares? Who cares if it's already been done? It's coming out of your heart. And it's okay to be influenced by all these external forces, but in the end, you take that and it's just a filter for you to express what's coming out of you as an artist. And I think that's fucking, yeah.
Like, and that's why I love art in general, because there's so many types of art that you can express yourself in: painting, now podcasting, radio, music, even makeup. That's a form of art.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Making
makeup artist,
making movies. That's a form of art.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So
everything can be a form of art. Everybody can be an artist. A plumber can be an artist. It's just how the passion. It's the passion you bring to it. Yeah, my father was a carpenter, so absolutely.
That's art to me. I couldn't do that.
Oh yeah.
Fuck no.
There's just something that you bring, that extra umph when you have the love, and it makes you an artist. It rather than just a journeyman, which is fine to be a journeyman as well. But a lot of journeymen got into something because originally they were artists, and they need to make a living. So
that's usually the trade-off when it comes to,
unfortunately,
things
Be careful. Be careful if you do what you love, because you won't love what you do.
That's a good quote. I like that quote. Yeah. Now let's move ahead real quick. So did you guys actually tour on the Humanly Possible record?
No.
Okay, so was this the first time that
we did a couple
happened?
of shows? We did a couple of shows local, as we are apt to do. Keith's last show, actually, Carlos was playing with us. Keith's last show was the Maryland Death Fest. They just happened to have called us and asked us to play, and it was fucking amazing. We ended up, so we get there and they're like, okay, every year there's this group. And I honestly, I can't remember what they were called, but they're this group of people who love to bring stuffed animals and balloons and inflatable things into the pit. And you're the band they chose this year. And we were like, okay, what does that mean? They said, it doesn't mean anything other than when you guys are playing, there's going to be a bunch of stuffed animals flying around everywhere. And I was like, fucking sounds like us. Like, great. Especially at a big metal gig, everyone's like, very fucking serious here. I don't smile in public unless someone is suffering. And I'm like, all right. I'm wearing bright purple and I'm wearing, and then someone threw like fish at me and I had a fish for a cock, and And yeah, but it was Keith's last show. And that was the last show we did for a while until we kind of were able to figure out a bit of a sound, a tighter sound for not having a guitar and just, having a bass that we were trying to fill that space.
And were you still signed to Surge's label at this time?
Surge's label had gone on by that point. When Keith left the band, that's actually the last point that I really talked to anybody in System. That would have been 2011. I still off and on will converse with George, who is the guy who runs. He was Surge's personal assistant, and then when Surge created Surgical Strike, George Tanikian became, or as we call him, Knee High, because he always wears these knee-high socks. Wonderful, wonderful human being. Fucking love you, George. Anyway, George is always kept in contact. He always wants to know what we're doing. He always is like, send me the newest record, send me the stuff, and he always gets it to the guys in the band. Surge now lives in like fucking New Zealand with Keith. Actually, they all live there together in this compound. Anyway, but yeah, he lives there, and I know that he sends him our stuff, and I'm pretty sure he hears it, but I really don't have any communication with those guys.
So were you searching for a new label at this point, or were you just going to put it out on your own?
We were just doing it all on our own at that point. We were just like, okay, this was fun. It almost killed us, signing, just that's how losing Keith was a real big part of it for me. It really put me in a spin for a long time. And I really felt that it's not that I certainly did not blame what had happened, and I'm eternally grateful for it. But as a lot of bands will tell you, when they get signed and it doesn't work out, that usually is the end of the band, because things just tend to,
well, if you're not prepared for it, you're gonna, if
you're not prepared, and there's a lot that you need to be prepared for. It's all the external factors telling you which direction you now need to play, that, you need to stop screaming. You need to try to learn how to sing, which I like going back to the sore throat, unhindered by talent, folks. So yeah, I'm much better entertainer than a singer. So, yeah, all those factors leaning in on you kind of make you kind of go, oh, okay, fuck getting signed. We'll just do it on our own. Punk rock, DIY again. And all the things that come with that, which is, again, not having mass distribution. Luckily, around the last few years, 10 years, you got like CD Baby,
DistroKid.
Yeah, exactly. And so they're kind of catering now because the music industry kind of imploded on itself. And as you would know, as everyone seems to know, but luckily at that point we had started doing our own thing again. And so it was fine, because now we had all these tools that weren't available literally like 5 years prior.
And you had the freedom to now go the direction you wanted to go musically without having outside forces telling you what to do.
Yes. Well, with Humanly Possible, that's where we really started going our own thing. And then having Danny in the band at that point. Danny is a fucking insane drummer. The man can blast. And
one of the best around here, I can tell you that much.
Absolutely. Yeah, he is fucking amazing. And so we wanted to utilize, Danny, what he brought to the table. He's, I want to try this, and this, and we'd be like, oh, okay, let's try this.
So had he heard of the band before?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Him and Caleb and Travis from Cattle had a band called Murder Construct, like a one-off band. And
it's a great band.
Yeah, it was actually a really great band. And Leon De La Muerte, another guy who was in that band. Actually, that was his band, his baby. So yeah, we had known Danny, and then also we had met Danny when he was in the band Uphill Battle, and we had played a few shows with them back in the day. I think we played their last show actually before they died.
Wow.
Yeah, good times.
So, I guess moving forward, sure. Right? So it had been 4 years at this point. Were you just playing the local one-off shows and
yeah, pretty much.
So no touring, just
no touring. Carlos has 3 kids, and he works for UPS. And he works nights. So
it's probably a little bit difficult to,
very difficult.
So do you start to handpick what shows you're going to do, or you just kind of take what you can get?
We handpick, and to the degree that, can we do the show? Is it local? Is it,
so you're not thinking from a business perspective as no, okay,
it's pure art. We all have our jobs. We all have our careers. Everything we do is because we love it. The shows that we play, if we we don't get asked to play a lot of shows, honestly. Dan Dismal and ADHD were two of our last 10 years were two of our prime West Coast production companies or whatever that would book us, booking agents.
Yeah, promoters. They were
promoters. Thank you. Yeah. Lifetime of drugs. Sorry. Promoters. That's the goddamn word. Yeah. They're like, I mean, we always would sometimes you get bands coming through that want to play gigs with us and, we want Badass Drip on the bill, whatever. But for the most part, if we get offered a gig and it's on the West Coast, we'll definitely assess if we can do it. Last weekend we were in Arizona. There was this Dead of Winter Fest that we went to play. We had heard that, the flyer had said that it was all about getting musical instruments for local kids. And so we were like, oh, well, fuck, we're going to be part of that, So as long as you guys.
It was a charity.
It was basically like a charity gig. It was like metalers coming together to help out the metal kids to get them some stuff. Ended up being it was 45 degrees when we played outdoors at 11 o'clock at night. My vocals, I could only hit mids, and I was like trying to, me, or, and I was just like, Caleb fell off the stage right before we played. One of the amps blew.
Sounds like a great show, dude.
It was unique. And then on top of that, unfortunately, they weren't able to get us all of our gas money because gas money is astro-fucking-nomical right now. So, some of the shows we choose may not be profitable for us, but again, it was about being able to help kids out. That was what we saw on the flyer. So we were like, well, fuck, of course we're gonna try and help out, man. Punk rock,
so cool.
Move that shit forward, man.
So cool. Now, Worship or Fear.
Uh-huh.
Walk me through the whole recording process of this one and how it was primarily different in terms of, I don't know, either songwriting or just recording in general compared to, say, your previous material.
It was the first record that it was just us three. And so we recorded with what we recorded at that point. We had a practice space that we were sharing with the band DIS and
Destroyed in Seconds. Okay.
Yeah. And Sean, who it was in his recording studio there, and he would do bands. And so we would go in there and record with Sean. And then after a while, we went to his house in Glendale, and we would do the vocals in his living room with his baby sleeping in another room and his wife. And that's basically how we did it. And Caleb Carlos did his drums. I laid down some scratch vocals, and Caleb laid down some, I believe it was just bass at that time. And then we went in and he did all of his overlays with the guitar and whatnot. And then I would go back in and, then we listened to it and go, oh, this should have this, or we should cut that out, or I should do a different vocal here, or that phrase isn't working, or,
It's interesting that you say, so you still do bass and guitars on the record. So how does that translate to the live performance? It's
two different animals, unfortunately.
Okay, so do you have to cherry pick certain songs into play if that's the case? Because you can't, unless you're doing like you have like tracks already programmed and you play along to that would be the only way to do that.
We were actually at the last show, because the amp blew out, we were talking about like, oh, we should get tracks, but that's just not us. We don't cherry pick the songs. They just sound different, on the record. There's this new record coming out. It's a lot of, I don't want to say Keith-esque, but it's just the guitar is very much a character. Then we actually had a couple of songs that we got Buzz from the Melvins to play guitar on. So that's even more of a character, because he's just doing a solo and it's just like fucking crazy noise. So when we play live, we just sometimes if there's a part of a song that I'm used to hearing now, because we've recorded a guitar part there and it's not there live, I'll do the vocal version of it, and it becomes this comedic moment, like sometimes I'll pick my leg up and I'll act like I'm playing guitar on my leg, just to accent this one part that I keep hearing in my head that I know isn't going to be live. But normally we just play live and it's just a bit more brutal because, everything's a bit more low.
Okay, so that comes from like Mike Patton, because he would do stuff like that in like Mr. Bungle days. Like,
Sure.
He would get away with saying blah, blah, blah. And that would be,
Oh, yeah.
yeah. So that's.
Yeah, Patton certainly was one of those people that really pushed open the door for just weirdo music, God
to the
bless him.
mainstream for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Now because it's been what, 7-8 years at this point since the last record. So I mean,
It's been a while. Yeah.
yeah.
When we hit our 30 year, which was a couple of years ago, we wanted to do a record, 30 songs for 30 years. That was right. We had just started to record it when the pandemic hit. And like I said, we were recording with Toshi, who's the engineer for the Melvins, and we've been recording at his studio. That's how we got Buzz to get on the record. We also got Sarah Remick from Watch Me Burn to do some vocals on it too. We spent the past year and a half just fine tuning as best as we could. Toshi, because he's the engineer, the sound guy for the Melvins, when they would leave and go to Japan, Toshi would be like, okay, guys, I'll be back in 3-4 months. Have your notes. And we'd be like, fuck, okay. So we have a full record ready to go. It's called Talk to Fear. We just did a split. Oh, well, this is a whole nother story. We did a split. Okay, so we had those 30 songs. We decided we only want to put 20 songs out. That's gonna be the new album, Talk to Fear. We actually, I believe, are going to release it with a label called. Fuck, I don't remember.
Oh, that's a good label name.
It's not really that name, but
I don't.
They're out of
records.
Tennessee. Weird grind. I apologize. We have so God damn it. We are talking with a label to release this through them. We're going to try to finally get to do a 12-inch with this, which I'm ready to put out on my own and just fund it, because we took the other 10 songs and we did a split with a band from Canada called Agent Mulder. And unfortunately, well, actually, they came to us and said, hey, we've been big fans of you guys. When you guys came up and toured Canada, we fucking loved you guys. You're weirdos, blah, blah, blah. We'd love to do a record with you. We said, okay, great. How much do you want? And they said, we'll pay for everything. And we were like, everything? And they were like, everything. Just give us tracks. And we were like, well, what do you want to release? And they said, we'll do tapes, which we were like, tapes? Well, okay.
Cassettes sell. They're selling, dude.
I know. It was just so fucking weird. So cassettes, limited pressing a CD, 12-inch vinyl split with colored vinyl, and a long sleeve T-shirt that would be done with the artwork of everything on their own. And we kept going, we'll help you pay for it. And they're like, don't even worry about it. We'll recoup it all on our own. They sent us a box of CDs, and it had tapes in it too, cassettes. And we started to, they were like, okay, the records, right? This is again as the pandemic had hit. So we didn't get the records and we didn't get the 12 inches. And we thought, okay, well, everything is shut down at the border with Canada for fucking ever. And it's taking forever to get shit. So we didn't think about it. About, I would say at the end of December, early January, we started getting all these messages from fans saying, we haven't gotten our records. We haven't gotten our set. We haven't gotten anything from this label. What's up? To which we discovered that apparently, and maybe there's something that we don't know, but apparently the band has gotten rid of. They took their Bandcamp page down. They took down all the stuff that you could buy and trace. They took everyone's money from the 12-inch that bought 12 inches. They took everyone's money that bought the long sleeves, and they just kept them. We never got our records to be able to try to recoup to our fans that had tried to support us. We just have these like 20 CDs, and the cassettes. And so, yeah, unfortunately, that would have been the newest release. And unfortunately, it looks like it's going to get buried because the thing that confirmed it for us is the artist who did all the art for the band posted something that said, I feel really bad for Bad Acid Trip. They really got fucked on this. This is a really good 7-inch. It really sucks that no one's going to be able to hear it. And we were like, what the fuck is this post about? And then we started digging and discovered that the other band has disappeared. They took the money and disappeared. Don't know if it was drugs. Don't know if they died of COVID. I don't know. Maybe it's still caught at the border after a year. I don't know. But that was actually our last release, and that would have come out about a year ago. And so that was going to we were trying to use that to placate and satiate our fans and saying that we're really trying to get this full length out. It's But because everything is so fucking difficult, because of the pandemic, we can't even get it mastered because the master guys aren't open anymore. We can't get it pressed because the pressing plant wasn't open. I mean, they're all open now, and we're moving ahead right now. We got Mike Fisher, the guy who does the artwork for he did like RKL and like Suicidal and all them. He also did Worship the Fear. He's doing the artwork for this one. It's based off of like Ralph Bakshi paintings, like from Wizards and Fire and Ice and all that. So it's very colorful. Like I said, it's called Taught to Fear. Actually, I have a couple of tracks I can play if you want to hear one.
Well, we'll do it after the
Sure.
the podcast for the listeners.
Yeah. Sure.
Because we got to remember this is actually a podcast, so I don't want to have to like awkward silences and all that other bullshit.
Cut it in later, man.
Right. So lastly, I want to thank you for coming on the show and hanging with me. I generally truly appreciate it. I've been a big fan for many years of Badass Trip.
My
ever
pleasure.
Since the Malone's show. That blew my mind.
That was with Cattle, wasn't it?
That
wasn't that the
No, it was not Cattle Decapitation. It was
Flatbush. No Moss.
I think it was God damn it! You're playing on the second stage. I can't. Maybe it was the Flatbush show.
And No Moss, and you were doing your podcast outside,
Correct.
Right? Yeah,
on
the patio. I
Correct.
remember that.
Yeah. So
Hooray.
I came in and I was like, this is fucking amazing. So
thanks, man.
Been a big fan. I appreciate you coming on and giving me the opportunity to speak with you, and hopefully we can do it again soon when the new record comes out. So
I look forward to it, brother.
All right, Dirk.
All right.
Well, for another episode of Poppitt's Corner, guys, we're out of here.
All right. Cheers.
Cheers.